I fell in love with my best friend's husband, and she knows I never believed in love at first sight until I met Daniel. The irony? He was holding my best friend's hand when it happened. It was Sarah's engagement party 3 years ago. I'd flown in from Chicago where I was finishing my master's degree, excited to meet the man who'd stolen my best friend's heart. Sarah and I had been inseparable since we were 7 years old, the kind of friends who knew each other's secrets, finished each other's sentences, and promised we'd be each other's maids of honor someday. When I walked into that garden party, champagne glass in hand, I saw them together by the rose bushes. Sarah was radiant in a white sundress, and next to her stood Daniel, tall with kind eyes and a smile that seemed to light up everything around him. When Sarah introduced us, his handshake lingered just a second too long, and I felt something shift in my chest that I'd never felt before. I pushed it down immediately. This was Sarah's fiancé, my best friend's future husband. Whatever I was feeling was inappropriate, unwelcome, and would never see the light of day. But over the next few months, as I helped Sarah plan her wedding, I saw more of Daniel. He was everything she'd described and more: thoughtful, funny, passionate about his work as an architect, devoted to Sarah. He remembered small details about conversations, brought coffee exactly how you liked it, and had this way of making everyone feel seen. I told myself what I felt was just admiration, maybe a little envy that Sarah had found someone so wonderful, nothing more. The wedding was beautiful. I stood beside Sarah as her maid of honor, watched Daniel's eyes fill with tears as she walked down the aisle, and felt my heart break into 1,000 pieces while I smiled and clapped. That night, I cried in my hotel room, mourning something that never was and never could be. After the wedding, I did what I thought was right. I created distance. I moved to Seattle for a job opportunity, though Chicago had better offers. I called Sarah less frequently, always had an excuse when she invited me to visit. When I did talk to her, I kept conversations short and surface level. The guilt was eating me alive, but I convinced myself this was noble, that I was protecting everyone. Sarah noticed, of course. She'd sent long texts asking if everything was okay, if she'd done something wrong. Each message was a knife to my gut. How could I tell my best friend that I was in love with her husband? That every time I saw their happy photos on social media, I felt both joy for her and an aching longing that made me hate myself? "You're being selfish," I'd tell myself while staring at my phone, her latest message unanswered. "You're choosing to be miserable instead of just getting over it and being there for your friend." But I couldn't. The feelings didn't fade. They grew stronger in the silence, fed by imagination and what-ifs that haunted my dreams. 2 years passed like this. I dated other people, trying desperately to feel for someone else what I felt for Daniel. There was Marcus, a sweet software engineer who took me to nice restaurants and wanted to introduce me to his parents. There was James, adventurous and spontaneous, who made me laugh. But none of them were Daniel, and it felt cruel to pretend otherwise. I was trapped in a prison of my own making, slowly losing my best friend and unable to move forward with my own life. Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday in October. Sarah showed up at my apartment in Seattle. I opened the door to find her standing there, soaked from the rain, mascara running down her face, looking both furious and heartbroken. 2 years, she said, pushing past me into my apartment. 2 years of you disappearing from my life, and I want to know why. My mouth went dry. Sarah, I've just been busy. Don't lie to me. Her voice cracked. I know you, Emma. We've been best friends for 20 years. You don't just drift away because you're busy. You've been avoiding me, avoiding us, and I need to know what I did wrong. The us hung in the air between us like an accusation. I couldn't look at her. You didn't do anything wrong. Then what is it? Is it Daniel? Do you not like him? Because I know you barely spoke to him at the wedding, and every time I invite you over, you have an excuse. If there's something about him that bothers you, I need to know. He's my husband, Emma. I need my best friend and my husband to at least be able to exist in the same room. The irony of her words almost made me laugh. If only she knew. It's not that I don't like him, I said carefully. Then what? I could feel the walls closing in. The truth was clawing its way up my throat, and I was so tired of holding it in, so tired of lying, so tired of this half-life I'd been living. I like him too much, I whispered. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Sarah's face cycle through confusion, realization, and something I couldn't quite read. Her hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Emma, I'm sorry. The words tumbled out in a rush. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I never meant for this to happen. I met him that day at your engagement party and something just... I tried to ignore it. I swear I did. That's why I've been distant. I would never, ever act on it. I would never try to come between you two. I just thought if I stayed away, maybe it would go away, but it hasn't, and I hate myself for it every single day. I was crying now. Years of suppressed emotion pouring out. You're my best friend. You're the most important person in my life. And I fell in love with your husband, and I don't know how to fix it. Sarah stared at me for a long moment. Then she did something completely unexpected. She started laughing. You're laughing? I asked, bewildered and hurt. Sarah, I just told you. I know, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. Though I couldn't tell if they were from laughter or something else. I know what you told me. Emma, sit down. We need to talk. We sat on my couch, the rain hammering against the windows. Sarah took a deep breath. Daniel told me on our honeymoon that he thought you didn't like him, she began. He said you seemed uncomfortable around him, and he was worried he'd done something to offend you. I defended you. Said you were just stressed about your move and your new job. But then you kept pulling away, and I started to wonder. She turned to face me fully. About 6 months ago, Daniel and I were looking at wedding photos, and I saw the way you were looking at him in some of them. The way you'd look away whenever he glanced at you, and I started to piece things together. My heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying I've suspected for a while now. And instead of confronting you, I hoped you'd talk to me, that you'd trust me enough to tell me. But you didn't, and I watched you disappear from my life instead. I didn't want to hurt you, I said desperately. And you thought shutting me out wouldn't hurt? Sarah's voice was sharp, but not unkind. Emma, you're in love with my husband. That's complicated and messy and not something you chose. But you know what hurt more? You choosing to deal with it alone. You choosing to push me away rather than trust that our friendship could survive this. How could it possibly survive this? Sarah reached for my hand. Because I know you. I know your heart. I know you would never act on these feelings. I know you've been torturing yourself over something you can't control. And I know that my husband is a good man who's completely devoted to me and would never betray me. Those are the facts. But how can we be friends if you what? If you have feelings? Emma, you can't help what you feel. You can only control what you do about it. And from what I can see, you've been doing the right thing. Just in the wrong way. I need to know, Sarah said carefully. Have you ever acted on these feelings? Have you and Daniel ever? No, I said immediately. Never. Sarah, I swear. I've barely let myself be alone with him. I've never said anything. Never done anything. He doesn't even know. She nodded slowly, seeming to believe me. Okay, that's important. I should move further away, I said. Maybe to another country. I can't keep putting you through this. Stop. Sarah's voice was firm. That's exactly what I don't want. Running away didn't make your feelings go away, did it? No, I admitted. Then running further won't help either. Emma, I want my best friend back. Not this shell of a person who's punishing herself for having feelings. I want movie nights and stupid inside jokes and someone to call when I have good news or bad news. I want you. How? I asked helplessly. How can we go back to normal? We can't, Sarah said simply. But we can find a new normal. One where we're honest with each other. One where you don't have to pretend. One where we figure this out together. The next few months were strange, painful, and ultimately healing. Sarah suggested we see a therapist together, which sounded insane at first, but turned out to be one of the best decisions we could have made. Dr. Martinez helped us navigate the complicated emotions, the guilt, the boundaries we needed to establish. Feelings aren't betrayals, Dr. Martinez told us in one session. Actions are betrayals. Emma having feelings for Daniel while maintaining appropriate boundaries and distance isn't a betrayal. Emma isolating herself and cutting off her best friend without explanation? That was actually more harmful to the relationship than the feelings themselves. It was a perspective shift that changed everything. Sarah and I started talking again, really talking. I told her about the loneliness of the past 2 years, the shame, the self-hatred. She told me how much my distance had hurt, how she'd worried she'd lost me forever, how scared she'd been when she'd figured out the truth. I was angry at first, she admitted during one of our long phone calls. Not because you have feelings for Daniel, but because you didn't trust me enough to tell me. Because you made decisions about our friendship without including me. I was trying to protect you, I said. I know. But I don't need protection from your feelings. I need honesty. I need my friend. We established boundaries together. I wouldn't spend time alone with Daniel. Group settings only, at least for now. I would be honest with Sarah if I was struggling. She would be honest with me if something made her uncomfortable. We would check in regularly, not let things fester. And slowly, painfully, we rebuilt our friendship. It was inevitable that Daniel would eventually know the truth. Sarah and I debated for weeks whether to tell him. Part of me wanted to keep it secret forever, to let him continue thinking I just didn't like him very much. But Dr. Martinez encouraged honesty, and Sarah agreed. He's noticed the weirdness, Sarah said. He deserves to understand why things have been strange. They sat me down one evening at their home, the three of us in their living room. My hands were shaking as Sarah explained everything. Daniel's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, discomfort, and finally something that looked like understanding. I thought you hated me, he said quietly, looking at me. For 2 years, I thought Sarah's best friend couldn't stand me, and I didn't know why. It was hard. I'm sorry, I managed to say. I never hated you. That was never it. I know that now. He ran a hand through his hair. This is incredibly awkward. Understatement of the century, I said. And despite everything, we all laughed a little. I want to be clear, Daniel said, his voice serious. I love my wife. Completely and absolutely. What you feel for me, Emma, I don't return it. I care about you because you're important to Sarah, but that's as far as it goes. The words hurt, even though I'd known they would, even though I'd known this was the reality. Hearing it out loud made it final in a way my imagination had never allowed. I know, I said. I've always known. I don't expect anything from you, Daniel. I never have. He nodded. Okay, then here's what I think we should do. We stop being weird around each other. We acknowledge that this situation is uncomfortable but manageable. We respect the boundaries Sarah and Emma have set, and we move forward. Just like that? I asked. Just like that, he said. Life is too short for drama we don't need. Sarah loves you. You're important to her, which makes you important to me. We're all adults. We can figure this out. It wasn't magic. There was no sudden cure for what I felt. But something did shift after that conversation. The secrecy had been the worst part. The lying, the hiding, the constant vigilance. Now that everything was out in the open, I could breathe. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I started spending time with Sarah and Daniel again, always in group settings as we'd agreed. At first, it was excruciating. Every kind thing Daniel did, every laugh we shared, reminded me of what I felt. But Dr. Martinez had told me something important. You don't have to stop feeling. You just have to stop feeding the feeling. So I stopped. I stopped imagining what-if scenarios. I stopped analyzing every interaction. I stopped following his social media. I consciously redirected my thoughts when they went down that path, the way you might redirect a dog away from something it shouldn't eat. And slowly, very slowly, the feelings began to fade. Not disappear entirely, but lose their sharp edges. They became more like a dull ache than a constant pain. I started dating again, but this time with more honesty. I told Marcus 2.0, yes, another Marcus, on our third date. I'm getting over someone. It's complicated, but I'm working on it. I want to be fair to you, so I'm telling you now. He appreciated the honesty. We dated for 6 months before mutually deciding we were better as friends, but those 6 months taught me something important. I could feel something for someone else. It wasn't what I felt for Daniel, but it was real, and it was mine. A year and a half after that rainy confrontation in my apartment, Sarah asked me to be godmother to her daughter. I was in my kitchen when she video called me, her face beaming as she held up a sonogram. It's a girl, she said, tears streaming down her face. And we want you to be her godmother, if you're comfortable with that. I cried. We both cried, and I said yes. Attending Sarah's baby shower was a milestone. Seeing her pregnant, glowing, talking about her future with Daniel, I felt something shift inside me. This was real. Their life together was real, beautiful, and completely separate from any feelings I had. And maybe more importantly, I realized I didn't want to be where Sarah was. Not really. Not if it meant being with Daniel specifically. What I'd been mourning wasn't Daniel himself, but the idea of having what they had. The partnership, the love, the future. When baby Charlotte was born, I was one of the first people at the hospital. I held that tiny human and felt only joy, uncomplicated and pure. Sarah watched me with her daughter, and later told me, "Thank you for fighting for us. For our friendship. Thank you for not giving up on me," I replied. It's been 3 years since Sarah showed up at my apartment in the rain. 3 years of therapy, honesty, hard work, and growth. I'm dating someone now. His name is Alex, he's a teacher, and he makes me laugh in ways I didn't know I needed. It's early still, just 4 months in, but it feels different than anything I've felt before. It feels like possibility without pain. Sarah and Daniel are thriving. Charlotte is almost 2, a whirlwind of energy and joy. I'm her godmother, and I take that role seriously. I visit once a month, spend time with the whole family, and it no longer feels like torture. Do I still feel something when I look at Daniel? Sometimes. A shadow of what once was, a reminder of a chapter in my life that taught me so much about myself. But it's no longer consuming. It's no longer the defining feature of my life. Sarah and I are closer now than we ever were before. Ironically, this crisis that could have destroyed our friendship actually strengthened it. We learned how to communicate through the impossible. We learned that love isn't just about romance. It's about commitment, honesty, and choosing each other even when it's hard. Do you regret it? Alex asked me recently, when I told him this whole story. Falling for him in the first place? I thought about it carefully. I regret the pain it caused. I regret the time Sarah and I lost. But I don't regret what it taught me. It taught me that you can't control your feelings, but you can control your choices. It taught me that real friendship can survive almost anything if both people are willing to fight for it. And it taught me what I actually want in a relationship, which isn't just about the person but about who I am when I'm with them. And who are you when you're with me? He asked, smiling. Myself, I said. Just myself. Last weekend, Sarah, Daniel, Charlotte, Alex, and I all went to the zoo together. We walked around in the sunshine, ate overpriced ice cream, and watched Charlotte squeal at the elephants. At one point, I found myself walking next to Daniel while Sarah pushed the stroller ahead with Alex, the two of them deep in conversation about something. "This is nice," Daniel said. "Normal." "Yeah," I agreed. "It really is." "Sarah told me you're happy," he said. "With Alex, I mean." "I am," I said. And meant it. Really happy. "Good." He smiled at me, genuine and warm. "You deserve that, Emma. You always have." We walked in comfortable silence for a moment, and I realized something profound. I had loved Daniel, in my own complicated way, but I had loved the idea of something I couldn't have even more. And in letting go of both, I'd found something better. Not better than Daniel specifically, but better for me. Authentic. Real. Possible. Sarah turned around and called back to us, "You guys coming? Charlotte wants to see the penguins." "Coming." We called back in unison, and hurried to catch up. As we walked toward the penguin exhibit, Alex reached for my hand. I took it, feeling grounded and present in a way I hadn't been for years. This was my life. Messy, complicated, beautifully imperfect. Full of people I loved in different ways, all of them important, all of them real. I fell in love with my best friend's husband, and she knows. She's always known. And because of her grace, my honesty, and both of our willingness to do the hard work, we all survived. More than survived. We thrived. And that's not the ending I expected, but it's the one I'm grateful for. Sometimes the hardest love stories aren't about being with someone. They're about loving people enough to be honest, to do the right thing even when it hurts, and to choose the relationships that matter most. This is my love story. Not about romance, but about friendship, growth, and learning that sometimes the greatest love is the one that lets go.